Hi, welcome back. I think, David, you have a question for Father Ces.
Kasi may naman akong kasabihan na yung parang all roads lead to Rome. As in, lahat ng daan, isa lang naman pagtutunguhan. Ganun yun ba yung natural law na maraming paraan pero isa lang naman yung pagpupuntahan in the end?
Kasi natural law is very, so it's universal, it's for all. So men have it in their minds and in their nature. But then, men have a very wide scope for their action. So they can do all sorts of things and they can use their freedom in all sorts of ways. Now, for as long as when they act according to certain moral truths and standards, then they are acting according to natural law. So in a sense, that's right. So all the roads might lead to Rome. That's why the natural law will keep on coming back and keep on coming back to man.
Actually, it just cropped up. One of the comments, nung nag-interview si Peter Sewald kay Pope Benedict sa Light of the World, tinanong sa kanya, I mean, how many ways are there to get to heaven? And then I think Pope Benedict, without even thinking, and to the astonishment ni Peter Sewald, without thinking, sabi niya, as there are people.
Persons.
Pero
right.
Again, it doesn't mean na kahit anong gusto mo, pwede mong gawin.
Hindi. Kasi the natural law somehow is a standard that fits and suits and is found in all men. So hindi siya pa iba-iba. Because it's based on the same nature, the same human nature, and the same practical reason. So its conclusions, its precepts, we will find out, we'll agree. It will be universal nga, one in all.
Okay. Well, some practical areas that we'd like to talk about. One of them is, how do you apply natural law, for example, for social issues and justice? Like for example, when you're talking about poverty and human rights, paano papasok yung natural law dito? Okay.
Natural law has, in our own setting, in the Philippine setting, has found its way even in decisions of justices of court. I'll just read to you an opinion of Chief Justice Reynato Puno, where he was gathering instances of the use of natural law thinking in decisions made by the Supreme Court. So I said, for example, in People versus Asas, the court admonished courts to consider cautiously an admission or confession of guilt, especially when it is alleged to have been obtained by intimidation and force. The court said, withal, aversion of man against forced self-affliction is a matter of natural law. Then he says, in Mobile Oil Philippines Incorporated versus Diocares et al., Chief Justice Fernando acknowledged the influence of natural law in stressing that the element of a promise is the basis of contracts, and so on and so forth. So the Supreme Court itself has based many decisions, according to Justice Puno, on natural law thinking and not on any other previous civil law or any other constitution. Then in the life of the nation, of the Philippine nation, we have seen a very concrete case of natural law working, and that is the EDSA 1 revolution. So in that case, the people thinking correctly that they were under an unjust and an illegitimate government, they thought they had the right to rise in arms, not in arms, but in revolution, to change it. Now, in that case, the Filipino people did not have any enabling law to do what they did. But they did right because they were acting according to natural law thinking, that we have a right to establish the government that we think is legitimate and just.
Fair and just.
And so, let's do it. And they did it. And we did it.
So would it be correct to say that if, for example, the RH law RH bill is passed, then perhaps the people could also engage in civil disobedience, not to comply or have the effectivity of natural law. If I remember, there's a politician in the US, si Rick Santorum, when faced with questions on, for example, yung sa Obama's law on contraception and also on abortion, he was actually urging yung mga Americans now, we should engage in civil disobedience on this if this ever happens. Do you think that's a proper call, and it's also something that Filipinos may want to consider as their right in essence because of natural law?
Well, so natural law demands that we respect persons, their religious freedom, and also their consciences. So no one can force somebody to do something against his conscience. Now, so in case the RH bill passes into law, and in case, let's say, there are provisions there that demand somebody to do something against his conscience, so that man can say, I object, I would rather follow my conscience rather than this law. So you might say that is personal disobedience. Now, when it comes to civil disobedience, that means it's an entire nation disobeying a law or trying to repeal it or to remove it. Well, of course, that's an option that people can choose if they perceive that that law is creating so much injustice or so much harm to the society, to the people.
Although, again, I think to put it into context, and for the audience, baka mamaya, civil disobedience tayo lahat. It doesn't mean that just because you're following natural law, that you're actually exempt from any legal sanctions sa pwedeng gawin ng gobyerno. In the same way, like for example, si Martin Luther King, nung pinuprotesta niya yung racial discrimination, or si Gandhi, ilang taon din siyang nalagay sa preso because of the fact na pinapanindigan niya yung rights niya essentially under natural law. If we could move on as well, hope.
I was just gonna add that in terms of the legal judicial applications of natural law, we do have certain principles that appear to come naman from natural law. One example would be yung sinasabi nilang yung mga you cannot obtain evidence from a poisonous tree. Yung
These are the Bill of Rights.
It's with natural law because it shows na kung masama yung gagawin mo upang makakuha ng ebidensya, hindi siya pinapayagan ng batas. So that's another application of natural law in our civil laws.
That's right.
Although Father says, I hope you don't mind my saying this, kasi you were mentioning yung opinion na binigay ni Chief Justice Puno in that case, which I think is Philippines versus Sandigan Bayan, which is a 2003 case. Although, yun nga lang, nag-uusap tayo kanina, it took pa yata a Protestant justice, considering ang daming Katoliko dun sa Supreme Court, to actually bring up the natural law reasoning, which is a quite interesting thing.
It just shows that that's it. It's not only the domain of Catholics, but even people of other denominations or faiths can understand it and can espouse it.
But I also think it also shows yung importance ng ginagawa nyo na lalong malaman ng mga Katoliko na there is such a thing as natural law, na they should be espoused.
Dapat malaman nila.
Can we talk about some of the more controversial fields na which natural law touches upon? If there's one na alam kong medyo mainit na mainit sa America right now, is on the issue of marriage and also on same-sex unions. And you were mentioning kanina sila Robert George and John Finnis, and I think sila yung mga nangungunang mga bosses ngayon because of the fact na ina-apply nila yung natural law principles when they argue in preserving yung konsepto ng marriage between isang lalaki at isang babae. At hindi dahil sa hindi pwede yung isang lalaki or babae.
That's right.
Could you please explain more yung application niya on this?
Yes, kasi the natural law thinking can help us to understand even better kung bakit ganon ang institution ng marriage, kung bakit ganyan ang family, at kung bakit ganyan ang mga batas ng simbahan or tinuturo ng simbahan about marriage and family. So, natural law thinking kasi, so we say is based on upright reasoning, correct reasoning, pero based on nature. Ngayon, a universal appreciation of the relationship between man and woman makes us realize that by nature, so man is either male or female. those differences, with a sincere understanding or study of human nature, leads us to realize na yung difference na yan, complementary. Okay. They're complementary biologically, psychologically, and socially. Now, that complementarity leads them to be attracted, and that leads them to be united physically in a union that by itself, by nature, is able to bear children. And so, that makes us realize, ito yung mga sinasabi ng natural law about marriage. It's between one man and one woman. Ngayon, with regard to the having children, at saka with regard to the relationship of love between the man and the woman, we can understand kung bakit isa pang characteristic ng institution of marriage ay yung indissolubility. Kasi the nature of love is exclusive, and the nature of health between spouses is also something permanent. Kaya, yan nakikita natin dyan, yung indissolubility. Plus yung kailangan ng bata, yung tulong ng magulang para lumaki silang mature, then you see then again a reason why there should be indissolubility. Kaya so yung natural law thinking makes us understand better kung bakit ganyan ang marriage at kaya kung bakit ganyan ang family.
Hindi accidentally kumbaga dahil gusto lang ng mga madre to or something,
That's
but because ito
there are reasons.
May dahilan. Well, and then the law of our director is telling us that we should wrap up the episode. But you could see na talaga this is a very nice, interesting topic, and I think it's something that hopefully we can keep on discussing as in future episodes. Hopefully we have future episodes for this one. But if I may, just some parting words. Am I correct in assuming it's part of natural law na mahalin natin ang ating bayan?
Yes, of course. That's right.
And so, what do you think would be paano makakatulong yung natural law sa pag-unlad ng ating bayan at saka yung sa mga kaguluhan na na-experience natin ngayon?
Ang suggestion ko is that all of us might become more aware, in fact, more educated about natural law thinking. It requires an open mind. It requires correct reasoning. It requires openness to truth about man, about society, about relations with each other, and about God. And it's the only way by which we can develop ourselves as persons, and then as families, and then as a society, and then as a nation. Because it's the truth, especially moral truth, that builds persons and societies. Kaya yan ang suggestion ko. We get to learn better natural law thinking.
Right. Well, thank you, Father Ces, for again joining us, and I hope we could see you again soon. And of course, David, for again quite being helpful in this show. I think in the discussions we had, in particular yung final statement niyo, Father Ces, considering right now nakikita natin yung bansa natin medyo nawawalan ng konti ng direction. I really strongly feel, and I think we all feel the same way, that natural law could perhaps be one of those things na pwede makatulong sa bayan natin na magkaroon ng direction. And on that note, I'd like to invite you all for the next episode, which is on homosexuality, which is actually one of the more controversial topics involving natural law. It promised to be very interesting, and I hope you can join us then. Again, this is Jemy Gatdula for Naturang Batas, Likas, Tama. Thank you.